Thank you, Denasia. And so, like I said, before we get started today, just want to let you all know, please feel free to post your questions in the chat, either to everyone or you can send them directly to me. Whatever is going to work for you the best. Our session is being recorded. I think you all just got the notice that the recording is starting. This is more so just for history keeping purposes and for folks that couldn't join us today. We'll also be making this available along with the slides in a few days after our time here today. And please feel free to mute yourself during the initial start of our conversation. I am looking to have a little bit of a discussion as we get to the mid portion or ending. Part of it just based on some trends that we're seeing and we want to see from our employer constituents, like where you all are at, what trends you're also seeing even on your campuses. So yeah, that's our time here today. Before we start, like what some people call housekeeping. But yeah, session's recorded. So should you want to review this again with your teams, you're more than welcome to do so. So who's on the call with you today? First and foremost, my name is Dr. Tim Layson. My pronouns are he and they, but you're free to call me Dr. Tim, Dr. Layson, Tim, Dr. T is what the students call me here at my university. I currently serve as your TPE chair-elect. So I work in tandem currently with the wonderful Kirby R. Gibson. And so I am working with her this year, but I also serve as our Employer Connections Chair. So helping employers and other institutions find ways in how we can integrate them into the TPE experience 365 days of the year, and like providing you all resources. But I do have a day job, just like many of us. I currently serve as an associate director at Santa Clara University in the Bay Area of Northern California. So it is morning for me. I don't know what it is for everyone else in the room, but happy to be here with you all. I am also joined by our director of the Placement Exchange, Denasia, and I will also let Denasia introduce herself.
Appreciate it, Tim. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. As Tim mentioned, I am Denasia Pendergrass-Thomas. I am the new director as of October of the Placement Exchange, and it has been a wonderful adventure thus far, being able to spend time with Tim, Kirby, and the rest of the committee getting ready for virtual TPE in March of 2022. Happy to be a part of this session. It gives me an opportunity to listen and learn from the wisdom of our chairs. And I do hope that you will take advantage of the opportunity to ask questions if you have them, engage in dialogue. Tim has a wealth of wisdom when it comes to employees connection. So enjoy yourself, ask questions, and I hope you walk away with information that you need. In terms of the housekeeping piece, once this is wrapped up, we hope to have the video on our YouTube side before we break for winter break. So people will have it for the rest of December and going into January when your staffs come back and start working on preparing for TPE. So thanks.
Thanks to Naja, and I will keep moving on with the good times here. So I want to kind of give a review of what we're doing here today, or like what we're covering. Talk about employer connections, because I recognize that not everyone has been either an employer or candidate to TPE, may not realize what employer connections is about. Give you some information, and actually the slide here is a little bit wrong. TPE from Spring 21, apologies for not catching that. But just giving you all some numbers and stats that we were able to gather from the feedback from our employers last year, why you should attend a TPE virtual. There's many reasons, but kind of going over them. Talk about logistics of how TPE will work, and also breaking down some of the costs. So that way you all can, as you're making your decisions for hiring and what that looks like, what TPE will look like for you from a budget perspective. How the virtual experience will work. If you've never done TPE virtual with us, I'll give you a brief overview. I actually go into it later in like a different time and presentation. I will do a deeper dive in how the logistical sides of TPE 22 will work, but today's just an overview of everything. We definitely want to engage our employer group with the topic that I'm sure many of you have seen around social media, or even in conversation circles you're a part of, this topic of the Great Resignation and what we're seeing, and even on our committee, what we have been discussing and how TPE can begin advancing this discussion and addressing it with our candidates and our employers. But especially from an employer side, I'm curious to know from everyone on the call here today, like where you all are seeing this and how this has been impacting you all. And then employer connection office hours. I will be offering open office hours on a couple of days a week starting in January 2022. So that way, should you have any questions or you want formal FaceTime with me, I'm more than happy to provide consultation during that time. So that's what we're going to go over here today. As Naja said, please ask your questions. You can send them privately to me. I can see the chat here on my secondary screen that I'm looking at. So if you want to send them privately or put them in the group, or unmute yourself. I'm not the type of presenter that says you have to wait until the end. If you have a question, please feel free to ask it. And then when we get to the discussion portion, please engage in discussion. All right, so just to kind of start off with, what is employer connections? So the purpose of what I do within this subcommittee is to provide new and seasoned employers the resources needed to recruit talent to your institutions. Just very broadly and very simply, but we assist with interview logistics with candidates, obviously, as part of being a registered employer. You do get a virtual schedule. And so I can talk you through what that looks like, and again, I cover some of these other things on how to schedule interviews with candidates moving forward, but obviously assisting with like the actual interview logistics, educational programming focused on creating and implementing inclusive hiring practices. If there's been anything from the feedback we've been given from our candidates that have gone through, something they always reflect upon employers is like how employers can create more inclusive hiring within their own processes, or how their processes are projected out to candidates. And so that's something that TPE has been addressing for the last couple of years, and doing some different things and helping educate employers on how they can create inclusive hiring practices. And so again, that will also be covered in a different presentation later on down the road. So stay tuned. Discussing important trends, like I said at the top of our time here today, one of the trends that we are seeing is this Great Resignation that is not just affecting corporate, but it's also highly impacting higher education and student affairs. So being able to pull out the trends and talk with our employers about how they're beginning to tackle some of these things. And if you haven't started having these conversations, maybe this could serve as a good springboard for that, because we want to be able to have those real conversations with our employers about, here are the things that we're seeing, here are the things that we're hearing as a committee. Are you all hearing the same things? And then additionally, and lastly, provide space for employers to connect with one another, to build relationships and share best practices. So we just want to be that space for you all to have that space and build connections with one another, and do that. So just giving you a brief overview of what my subcommittee does. And so again, I like sharing data. I think data is very important. So these numbers are directly pulled from TPE 2021 in the spring. If you don't know, TPE has been an all virtual experience since the spring of 2020. Obviously, in the spring of 2020, we canceled our in-person event and moved everything virtually. The virtual TPE experience has been something that both employers and candidates have been asking for years, and 2020, as we all know, just kind of thrusted everything into the megaverse of the internet. And so TPE has been evolving since then too, and how we offer programs and resources. But again, just to view it by the numbers, 89% of employers would recommend TPE to their colleagues. So 89% of the employers that attended and were surveyed, good percentage of them said that they would refer TPE to their colleagues. And I will also say, as an employer, there was a great number of new schools that joined us last year. So if you're a newer institution or an institution thinking about it, we saw a huge spike in newer institutions, and not only just new institutions, but institutions from smaller private universities. We saw an expansion of our mid-sized universities as well. And so there's a great representation of institutional diversity in terms of type, and also geographic diversity um, within the same time. I think this is a great statistic to point out. 90% of employers reported that a TPE candidate was one of their finalists. Within that percentage, 94% of employers reported that a TPE candidate was offered and accepted their job as a result of attending TPE virtual. So I bring that stat out because we are still seeing folks that are finding positions through here. And for those of you who have not been at TPE before, or might be rejoining us, there's also a breadth of positions that have grown over the last couple of years. We've seen a lot more mid-level positions come on board. Last year we had anywhere just under a dozen senior level positions come on board. So we're talking about, assistant dean of students, assistant vice chancellor, vice chancellors. And so these are all active participants within TPE. So not only has the candidate pool begun to diversify with like our traditional, what we would consider entry level professionals, but even our mid-level and seasoned professionals have also begun to take advantage of TPE. So as an employer, I bring that up just because it's important to recognize that you don't just have to recruit for your entry-level positions. You can also think about recruiting for your mid-level positions, your senior level positions. And so I think that's important because institutionally, you want to be able to represent the best of who you are and what you can offer. And so for our folks on the call, that if that's something of interest or consideration, I'm happy to talk more offline, but just kind of give you all some of the breadth of where TPE has gone, even in just the 3 years I've been on the committees. It's quite remarkable. And so again, I like to show the numbers because numbers don't lie. And so we want to be able to back up with what we're saying. And then obviously our top reasons for employers who participate in TPE is the diverse candidate pool. Our candidates come from all walks of life. They come from different institutions. They come from different places within the country. And so it's just the diversity of our candidate pool. And then also the number/amount of candidates. We continue to attract a high number of candidates every single year. And our employers, we also want to continue to attract a high amount of employers to match our candidate numbers. And so even as of today, we have over 100 plus candidates registered for TPE, which is great for this time of year, knowing that we're heading into a break. So we're already seeing it in some of our numbers, and our numbers are only going to go up from here in terms of candidates and our employers. I really want our employer numbers to go up as well. So are there any questions on TP by the numbers or anything that I can explain? All right, I will keep the party moving. All right, so obviously, as an employer, reasons to attend. TPE is the kickstart to the SA Pro hiring season. We, as the TPE steering committee, we look at hiring as a 365-day experience, and that the event is just the starting place for recruitment. It doesn't stop with TPE, and it really is just the beginning of our hiring season. And so there are always jobs being posted on the TPE job board every day. And so employers, like even after the event, like please continue to post your jobs on our job board because there are new ones there every day. And candidates are also looking at this job board every day. So TPE is the start of the recruitment season, is no way, shape, or form the end of the recruitment season. Obviously, the financially cost effective for both employers and candidates. You don't have to travel. You don't have to budget for hotels. You don't have to budget for meals unless you're doing things at your home institution. But because everything is virtual, the amount of cost to have to bring people, or even just one person to TPE on site prior, is eliminated because of the virtual format. And so it's really cost effective to be able to see at one point last year over 900 candidates. And so I think from an employer perspective, it is a great avenue to meet the most amount of people for the best bang for your buck. And again, I'll break down some of the costs here in a slide or two, but from a financial perspective, it is a huge advantage. It's obviously efficient and convenient. Beginning your conversations and beginning your processes within the 3 to 4 days that we have TPE scheduled for is going to be a huge benefit for you, to where you have this captive audience of people ready and willing to want to interview with our institutions and who qualify for your positions. And so for an employer, it's a great advantage to be in. You'll have a really big pool of people to look at, consider, invite, but the efficiency and the convenience of it is that it's just done within your home institution. If you are thinking about or have potential anticipated positions, I will always recommend that you as an employer, that you go to TPE virtual. Just because your position's anticipated does not mean you can't have the beginnings of conversations with folks via TPE virtual, and just keep them engaged within your process and keep them updated. We had a number of employers last year. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head for this group particularly, but there was a good number of anticipated positions that we had full registrations for. So that way employers had lists, had the ability to see candidates who were registered for the event and pull resumes and begin to have those conversations and all of those things. So even if your positions are anticipated, we still highly encourage that employers and institutions still register for TPE, because again, it is a one-stop place for a good portion of time, to where you can begin these conversations within your institution and the positions that you're looking at hiring. And of course, our outstanding candidate pool. Our candidate pool, like I said, comes from all different parts of the country, different types of institution, varying levels of experience, from graduate level or bachelor's level individuals to seasoned professionals with 15 plus years of experience. I've personally been a candidate twice and an employer a couple of times. And so I love the experience that TPE can bring, whether it was in person or even in this virtual format. I still believe in the power as an employer to bring people together and have the ability to exchange why you want to be in the position, and more importantly, like, what can we do to help you advance your own career. So I think from a reasons perspective, yes, you miss those, what I like to call hallway conversations with people if we were on site, so you could like run into some former friends or graduate school folks. But I still think it's important that TPE as a whole is still connecting folks, employers to candidates, candidates to employers, and just professionals in our field together in order to recruit the best talent for the positions that we have open. So looking at some logistical information, this is the website to register for TPE if you haven't done so. So employer registration costs, the standard cost is $250. So with that, you get one interview schedule. You get one job post that will post for more than 60 days, which is less than the regular cost to just post a job for 60 days. You get access to the registered candidates, and obviously get access to the educational programs and resources. And if you'd like to upgrade your standard job post or premium job post for the first one, it is a zero charge upgrade. For any other positions after that, it is $175 or $125 if you're doing the standard upgrades. Standard if you're doing the standard posting, and $175 for the premium postings after that. But for your first position, it is $250. And you can upgrade to the premium event post. So the big difference is that with the premium event post upgrade is that you get to see everyone in the candidate pool more than just the registered candidate. So on the standard job post, as an employer, you'll see everyone who is registered for the event, because we will have candidates that will sign up with TPE but not be able to make the actual event for one reason or another. So as an employer, you'll get to see everyone under a premium job posting, which I think is hugely beneficial, because then you'll have a wider access to the candidate pool. And so again, the base cost for a registration is $250. It includes an interview schedule. It includes a job post for more than 60 days. And actually the job post will stay up till June 1st. Access to register candidates to programs. And then if you would like to upgrade to the premium job post for your first position, it is zero charge upgrade at that point. And then if you have other positions that you're posting for, it is $175 for the additional premium postings and $125 for the standard postings. But the other thing I want to highlight is our institutional spotlight sessions, which, yes, is an additional $75. But what I really love, and we started this last year, institutional spotlights are like what we consider like a career fair type of setup. So there's a limited number of them. And so institutions will have a time and a day designated to them to where from 10 to 11, your institution will be featured. And so candidates can come and talk with you, explore what positions you have open. It is a great way for you to involve other people who aren't necessarily part of your search team. I know we had an institution last year that brought their VPSA, their director of the department, of their various departments that they're hiring for, and candidates just came in very casually and talked with people. Like, yes, it is an additional $75 for that, but the access that you'll have to be able to have candidates view you and like really just showcase what's so great about your institution, where you're located, is really prime. And so I would also suggest that you take advantage of that as well, because again, for the amount of financial costs that you would incur as an institution, it is much less than having to travel and try to do all these things in person as well. And so these are just some of the breakdowns and costs. Again, if you have questions about anything, please feel free to post them in the chat or send them to me privately. But again, we want to be transparent about what the costs are looking like. That is a great question, Lauren. I don't have the numbers, but we can get that. We can get it back to you. So each session was a little bit different too, and how the institution did it. But I know we track the numbers. I think we just have to break them down a little bit. Does that make sense? Thumbs up or just say yes in the chat works for me.
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
Wonderful. But again, it is a great way to spotlight. Again, that's why it's called institutional spotlight. And so, great question. If you have multiple job postings and want to do premium posting, yes, that is correct, Josh. So the registration is $250 for your, like, essentially for your first posting. And then if you do the premium upgrade for no charge, that specific position will have that premium upgrade. And then depending on the other position, so if you're posting for like, I'll just use a housing because I work in housing. If you have a position for an RD role that you're looking at TPE, and then you have an assistant or associate director, so those would be two separate postings. But your first one would be $250. And then if you decide to do the premium upgrade for that assistant or associate director role, then it's either the $175 for the premium or the $125 for the standard. So yes, that is correct. $250 for the first one as an institution, and then the additional costs after that. Great, glad that was helpful. Oh, EKU, hey, Eastern Kentucky. I visited your school before when I was a graduate student. Beautiful campus. I'm assuming that's Eastern Kentucky because it's Eastern Kansas.
Yes.
Yes, go is it Colonels?
Yes.
Yes, go Colonels.
Woo.
Sorry, I get excited when I see these connections. So yes, that is our cost information. And again, I'm happy to break this down a little bit for you all. But this is currently this is also listed on our website. But again, happy to talk through it. So how does this work? If you've never done this with us before, I also just like to explain it. So the event schedule of events, which makes no sense sometimes. So more of our information about what the schedule will look like and all of that will be posted in January 2022 or starting to post in January 2022. So keep looking out for our website and our emails. We will be sending out newsletters frequently as we get closer to the event. So whoever your recruiting person is, or your hiring manager, please make sure you forward those to your respective folks. We'll provide the calendar for you all to schedule interviews with the candidates, and then you all will provide the web conferencing format. So whether it's Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, Skype, whatever it is that your institution is using, you all will use your own institutional platform, just because from a TPE perspective, we just don't have the capability to give everyone a Zoom login or Zoom information out like that. And so, but if that is a barrier for your institution, please let us know that. And we can try to see what kind of workaround we can assist you with. Because it's not that we won't do it, it's just we just don't have the necessary bandwidth to control all of that. So, but again, if that is a barrier for your institution, please email us at employers@theplacementexchange.org, and we'd be happy to figure something out for you. And then just for purposes of timing, everything will be in the Eastern time zone, just the way that our website is set up. We don't have the ability to change time zones necessarily right now. I know that we've been trying to work on that, but we're going to be staying in the Eastern time zone. And if that does change, we're hopeful you all are able to we're able to get to that point. But if it does change, we'll make sure to make that known. But for the purposes of TPE for the last couple of years, virtually we stayed in the Eastern time zone, just so that way there's one time zone that everyone is trying to figure out time to, instead of just changing it every year. So I hope that makes sense. Again, should you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Just copy this. Okay. All right, so this is the discussion portion. And I do want to spend a little bit of time on this. So Eastern Kentucky and maybe Josh, if you all are off camera, if you want to come on camera, or just respond. But we're seeing a historic amount of professionals continually leaving the field. And so I'm curious, from both of your institutions, one, are you fully staffed at this point?
At Eastern Washington University, we are not fully staffed, obviously, from COVID, and that created some budget reductions, particularly in the housing field with less students living on campus. And so I think we definitely have done more with less, like many campuses. And I anticipate that will be kind of the way moving forward for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Josh. From Eastern Washington to now Eastern Kentucky. What's been the experience like for you all out there? I see some smiles in the room, so maybe this is hitting differently.
Okay. Right now we are fully staffed. We do have one opening coming up in January, but we have been fully staffed since September.
That's great.
Yes.
That is amazing. Wow. I'm like almost speechless. No, that's great. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you all have your own personal connections within the field. Either Eastern school at this point. But I'm sure you all have seen it too, where people are just like leaving. They're just like dropping out and, for one reason or another. But I guess the question, and maybe you all could think about it, is like, why do you all think this is happening?
Self-care and burnout.
I'm sorry, what?
Self-care and burnout.
Okay, do you want to expand on that?
Oof. So I think our field asks a lot. That's not necessarily asking a lot of us, but I think generally in people-oriented fields, you're going to be taking on more as well as you're going to be having more responsibilities. And I think as we see budget cuts and other things, you're taking on other capacities of other people's responsibilities. We also serve on call where we're having those later hours, having those later conversations. And typically we're not the people to leave exactly 9 to 5 and then we're out of office. We're typically doing other things, other committees, going to events and even for students being involved in other things. And we also have larger decisions on our plates at times where we can't just clock out, but maybe example, earlier this year, I had to transition a building from one building to another in the middle of the night. So I think we have a lot that is on our plates, but that can also pop up on our plates.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. Being asked to do more with, I'm just going to say, asked to do more with even less.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with having gone through a pandemic for the last almost 2 years and not having any actual break from that, from having probably a bunch of schools across the nation having to furlough staffs or in their own ways give out their pink slips just because they can't afford to keep people on, and then distributing that workload more. The students themselves are going through a whole new slew of crises all the time. What it takes to get your degree today is very different than what it was 3-4 years ago.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I think the sentiment is definitely shared where, this panoramic pizza, as I like to call it, the panny. The panoramic pizza has definitely put a wrench in what our operations have used to be. And like, even personally, how I view student development at this point. Just because of the trajectory of our students has been so much altered, whether you are what we consider the traditional age student or even for our non-traditional students, like it's been altered in so many different ways. So that is a great point. And especially from a professional standpoint, it's, reasons why people are leaving. And so I think, yes, all good points. So, and I guess this leads to your second point. I don't know who said that from Eastern Kentucky, but how have institutions been responding to this pandemic of the Great Resignation within a global pandemic?
I think in student affairs in general, I think we have often, I guess the norm has been to 100% support staff, like, okay, you're here for 2 years and then you're going to transition to a new university, or here for X amount of years and then you'll transition. And I think one thing that institutions are doing is, what can we do to retain the staff that we have, rather than, and support their development and give them, if they want to develop new skills, kind of help them do that here instead of just being like, yes, you know, you want to search for the new job or whatever. So figuring out what you need to do to retain your staff.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, I think I think that was spot on. I think there's definitely a focus to keep the great people you do have. I think we're also looking at what we previously maybe defined as student success, and being successful at what we do has certainly changed during the pandemic. And one of the things that we're seeing on our campus is within student affairs, I think we all work collaboratively with one another, but there oftentimes can still be silos even within student affairs between different units. And as you know, people are leaving the field and you get smaller staffs, it sort of forced people to reach across the aisle, if you will, and collaborate and look at things a little bit differently as far as resources. So we've actually seen, I think, some units come together in different ways than maybe they've had in the past because the resources have been impacted.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll give you all this perspective from my institution. And this, I mean, maybe it is airing out some dirty laundry, but it's also no secret. We're an institutional size of just under 9,300, including graduate students. And in our division of student life, or student affair, or what you consider division of student affairs, we currently have about 27 open positions. And 27 open positions, 3 of them within residence life at a hall director level. And so we have struggled to find people to come here, not just because of the traditional reasons of cost of living and whatnot, but just in general for like folks who want to apply and be in these roles. And I think as employers, it's important for us to like, I'm glad that you all are experiencing what you're, well, maybe not glad, but I'm glad that you all have some of the foresight and knowledge of, you know, what your institutions have been doing. But I think from an employer perspective, these 2 questions just by itself are going to be questions that candidates will ask in an interview when they get to the portion of, you know, them asking you all questions. And as an employer resources and connections chair, it's important that I'm being transparent with like what we're hearing from our candidates, and also being transparent with our employers of like, you got to start thinking about these questions and how you have to go beyond just saying, well, we promote self-care by letting our staff leave early or flex their schedules. Those are great, and those are great things and admirable things to do, but that is not going to sustain someone in a position for a very long period of time. So as an employer, thinking about what these questions are going to look like for you, and how you and your teams or the folks that you're working with on your interviewing you'll need to make sure that you're on the same page. Because the next question is, you know, again, how are you all going to discuss these things in your recruitment strategies moving forward? And I want to make sure I play the last question to you. And, you know, even on our campus, we're reimagining and rethinking about like how we talk about campus culture. Because as great as Santa Clara University is, and go Broncos every day, there are some really not so great things that people will hear about, whether from folks currently working here or from former folks working here at Santa Clara. And so we talk about each of our respective campus cultures being this thing, but especially in this time of where we're at in our well, in the world's history, and higher ed as a whole, how are institutions redefining and reimagining how they explain campus culture to folks? So just does this make sense for you all? Is any of this resonating with you all? Thanks for the thumbs up. I will also take the 11.5 seconds of Zoom silence as a yes. Oh, thank you. And so again, I think we talk about this Great Resignation that's currently happening, and whatever experience that's happening at your school or institution, it's important that some of these questions begin to get answered for your particular searching process. Because it is part of the recruitment process, and we're already hearing it from candidates in the various candidate development spaces of how are employers responding to the ongoing needs of staff that are currently there, and like also onboarding in the onboarding process of new staff. So like I said, at the time of our earlier in our session today, I am going to have employer connection office hours. Here's my flyer. Again, it'll all be sent to you all. But Monday and Thursdays, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard, all the times are Pacific Standard Time. So for our East Coast folks, that's around 10 a.m. And then obviously for our West Coast friends, it's just an early morning. And then on Tuesdays, to provide at least one set of hours after hours on either coast and in between, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And so again, we're here to help you with interview prep, review interview strategies, logistics, and so much more. I helped the school last year develop their interviewing platform of, first round, second round, and what they're trying to do, and helping them and navigating them through like what this process can look like. But again, we'll also have more offerings beginning January 2022. So programs just like this, breaking down some of the things I've already talked about already moving forward. But again, wanting to make sure that you all get the connections for office hours or employer office hours. The tiny URL is listed here. It's linked to a Calendly site. So you'll see the times that are available. Just sign up. It'll be a 30-minute Zoom meeting or up to a 30-minute Zoom meeting. If you need more time, then I can work around some other things in my schedule to provide more employer space. But again, I want to make sure that our employers have the ability to meet with me one-on-one or as an employee team, so that way I can answer any of their questions. And we want to hear from you. What questions do you have for us? And just as an overall thank you for being here today. And should you have any other questions after today, please email us at employers@theplacementexchange.org. But I do want to leave some time for open questions. And I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Thinking about this virtual format, what are some ways that like you saw last year employers use to kind of make themselves stand out?
Yeah, so I'm gonna name drop a school because I feel like they have just historically. I'll name drop two schools that did things really well last year that I was able to see myself. So Texas Christian University, Fort Worth, Texas, TCU. They've been a long time employer with TPE, and so when the pandemic hit, they upped their social media game on Instagram. So they did like live feeds via through TPE, and even before and after TPE to kind of like connect with folks that way. They obviously did like their own like virtual social with folks that they were interested in interviewing. But I will say TCU has done a great job in like their social media presence. Just so that way they can engage in prospective candidates in many different formats that's outside of an email, the traditional interview times, and kind of leverage that other space. And then when they got to the on-campus phase, when they were still doing virtual interviews, and this is also budget dependent, they sent their on-campus candidates a small care package. Just saying, we're excited for you to interview with us. Here's a pendant, here's a pen, here's a food item, like a brisket. No, I'm just kidding. But like they did like a small care package. So they reached their candidates in like a variety of formats in the virtual space and out of the virtual space. The other institution that I will also highlight, and Tasha can also back me up on this, Stony Brook University did a great job with their institutional spotlight last year and really leveraged that time because they brought in other folks. They highlighted things about their institution, and they took advantage of the institutional spotlight and invited anyone and everyone that they were interested in to come and meet with a majority of their team, whether they were interviewing with them or just like super interested. And they were actually able to pick up other interviews from that time because other candidates came by from like other candidates talking about it. So even though candidates are like not in person and employers are not in person, candidates still find ways to connect with one another, no matter what the process is. And so like obviously word of mouth is one thing, but I would just say those are two of the bigger examples that I remember from last year, that the two institutions that really stick out in my mind. I mean, every institution did a little bit differently, but I would say those were the two. And I would also venture to say that those who did end up doing the institutional spotlight also saw a greater like yield of who they were potentially seeking and picked up like maybe one or two folks that maybe would have not considered the institution. Because I mean, I didn't know about Eastern Kentucky until I went to CHO. And I was like, oh, CHO, I don't know who y'all are, but y'all sound interesting. And so going to those things and networking obviously is a big thing, but I would say those are the two bigger examples of folks that I remember from last year. Great question. Josh, did you have any questions? Not to put you on the spot.
No, I think I'm good. It's just a matter of probably going to some of the future deep dive on the logistics. Because it's been a while since I've been to TPE, so and certainly
Yeah.
not in the virtual format.
Yep. And again, I'm happy to do one-on-ones too if you want to come to office hours. I'm not scared to do this because I do this every time. In the chat, I just dropped my personal cell phone number. So should you want to text me, feel free to do so and set up a time, but I try to be as available to our employers as much as I can. And so if y'all have any other questions, feel free to stick around. But again, just thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I'm just really excited that even though we have 2 people, and that's great, I'm just excited to get this process going because I love recruitment and I love everything about TPEs.